You can call me Link. It's not my name, but it's what I say when anybody asks. Which isn't often. I'm invisible, see? One of the invisible people. Right now I'm sitting in a doorway watching the passers-by. They avoid looking at me. They're afraid I want something they've got. And they're right. Also, they don't want to think about me. They don't like reminding I exist. Me, and those like me, we're living proof that everything's not alright, and we make the place untidy. Hang about, and I'll tell you the fascinating story of my life. My fascinating life? Yes. Born March 20th, 1977 in Bradford, Yorkshire, to Mr. and Mrs. X. We're a family, you know, as happy as most, till Dad ran off with a receptionist in 1991 when I was 14 and at the local comp. This mucked up my schoolwork for quite a while, but that's not why I ended up like this. No. Vincent's to blame for that. Good old Vince. Mum's boyfriend. You should see him. I mean, Mum's not Kylie Minogue, but Vincent. He's about 50 for a start, and he's one of those old dudes that wears cool gear and tries to act young, and it doesn't work because they've got grey hair, fat bellies, and they just make themselves pathetic. And as if that's not enough, Vince likes his ale. I suppose Dad must have been a bit of a bastard in his way, but at least he wasn't a boozer. You should see the state Vincent's in when he and Mum come home from the club. He's got this very loud laugh, laughing at nothing, if you know what I mean. And he stands there with his arm round Mum, slurring his words, and tells me to call him Dad. Dad. I won't call that fat pillock Dad if he was the last guy on earth. And the one thing that really bugs me is the way he leers at Mum, and comes out with this very suggestive stuff about going to bed and grabbing off a decent night. In all the years Dad was with us, I never once knew him to mention sex in my hearing, or even hinted it. This slob leers and winks, and nudges with one eye on me to see how I'm taking it. And Mum just laughs and shoves him and says, "Oh, you are a one." It makes me puke. He's changed her. That's one of the things I hate him for. She used to be one of those quiet people who are satisfied with the daily routine of their lives. She hardly ever went out at night. She didn't even seem to want to. She was wrapped up in her family, I guess. She was always there when you needed her, and I think she loved us. Me and Carol, I mean. Oh, I know how it sounds, me going on like this about Mum as though she wasn't entitled to a life of her own. Of course she's entitled, but what I'm saying is, why Vince? Carol's my sister, by the way. She's 4 years older than me, and she always spoiled me. And when good old Vince moved in and Mum started changing, it was Carol who made life bearable for me. It was bad, but I could stand it with her there to support me. Then one night when Mum was working late, something happened between Carol and Vince. I didn't understand it then, and she never told me anything, but I have a fair idea now what it must have been. Anyway, she said something to Mum and they had this flaming row about it, and it ended with Carol walking out of the house. She moved in with her boyfriend and I was on my own. I stuck it out till I finished school, but that was it. I'd got 5 GCSEs, which is a miracle when you remember what was going on at home, but I couldn't get a job, and there's no government money for school leavers. You're supposed to be on a training scheme, but there aren't enough places and I didn't get one. I'm sure Mum would have supported me till I found something, but it wasn't long before Vince started on me about living on his money. I wasn't living on his money. I topped myself first. It was Mum's money, but he went on, getting nastier and nastier, and one night, when I'd been with my mates, he locked me out of the house. It wasn't even his house, but he locked the door and wouldn't let Mum open it. I went round to Carol's and she let me spend the night. And when I got home next morning, Vince started slapping me around the head for going off and worrying Mum. If you happen to know anybody who's looking for a 100% out and out bastard, I can let him have Vince's address. Anyway, that's how he was with me. And I guess Mum's scared of him because she didn't stick up for me. So I left. You'd have left too in my place. Anybody would. It's called making yourself homeless. And so here I am, sitting in this doorway which is now my bedroom, hoping some kind punter will give me a bit of small change so I can eat. Good, eh? It's begun. The recruiting. And it was easy as falling off a log. I didn't even have to go far. My flat, mine and Sappho's, is in Morrington Place, and I found my first recruit in a doorway near Camden station. A mile, if that. Mind you, it was a filthy night. Cold, wet, windy. Cut straight through you, that wind. I was wearing a parka, stormproof over trousers and strong boots, and I still perished. What he must have felt like in damp, tatty denim I shudder to think. It was 1:30, so he'd probably been there an hour or two, freezing his tabs off. And that's why it came so easy. What I did was, I squatted down in front of him and said, "What's up, mate? Down on your luck?" I smiled as I said this. I best do good a smile. I was prepared for a possible rebuff. I mean, it might have been deeply suspicious. Thought I was a woofter or something. But it didn't seem to cross his mind. Half daft with cold, probably. Anyway, he opened his eyes and looked at me and frowned and mumbled, "Who are you?" He was Scottish. Me? I gave him a smile. Shelter's my name. I helped run the hostel on Banda Street. That got him. "Hostel?" he says. "What sort of hostel?" "The young people," I said. "The Townhouse Project. You might have heard of us." He wouldn't, because we didn't exist. I made the whole thing up, name and everything, part of my preparation. He fell for it, hook, line and sinker. "Any chance of a bid?" he says. "Bad to eat?" I shook my head. The rueful gesture I'd practised in the mirror. "Not tonight, I'm afraid. Full up. Might be something tomorrow if you get there early." "Ah," he says, and the light goes out of his eyes. He's thinking about the long cold hours ahead. I let him ponder the prospect for a bit, then said, casual like, "There's a comfy couch at my place if you don't mind roughing it." Roughing it. Brilliant touch, that. And it worked. "You sure?" he says. The light's back. I can see his little brain working. He's thinking, this guy runs a hostel. Warm beds. Grub. It gets full. But if I'm with him, I'm in, right? "You sure?" he says. I'll give him a smile again. "Sure, no prob. It's just around the corner. Come on." That's all there was to it. I strode out and he trotted at my heels like a ruddy poodle. It was pissing it down and it was sodden by the time we reached the flat. I introduced Sappho, showed him the bathroom, told him to strip off, throw in some stuff I got for purpose. Thick sweaters, cord trousers, the sort of stuff do-gooders wear. I went off to eat some tomato soup. And while he was sitting on the sofa scoffing it, I slipped up behind him and put him out of his misery. Cruel? I don't think so. He's neither cold nor hungry now. Nobody wanted him, so nobody will miss him. And there's one less dosser to clear up the place. Who loses? The last days of January were swine. I nearly went back to Vince. I mean it. It snowed every day, so the pavements were thick with slush, and nothing gets inside a pair of trainers like slush can. Ginger and I lurked in subways and doorways as much as we could, but our feet were constantly wet and freezing just the same. Night after night, frost turned the slush to grey iron and crept into our damp bedding to stiffen footwear and make sleep impossible. And if you think it's bound to make the punters more generous with their change, seeing kids wet and shivering, forget it. It had the opposite effect. Everybody slogged grimly by and their hands never left their pockets unless they was wearing gloves. Nobody stopped. Maybe they thought they'd die if they stopped, like explorers at the South Pole or something. We grew hungry. Really hungry. The cold seems to settle in your bones when there's nothing in your stomach. You can't shift it. We tried everything. Stamping our feet, running on the spot, blowing into our hands, bundling together in the subway. It was no use. All we could do was keep moving through the sleepless nights and days that merged into one another until we no longer knew what day it was or whether it was morning or evening. One time, Ginger borrowed a marker pen from an old news vendor and printed a couple of placards which read, "Non-alcoholic homeless. Please help." He said you had to put non-alcoholic because people seldom give to winos. We sat in a subway somewhere with our feet and legs in our sleeping bags and the placards on the muddy tiles. But you might as well have put "evil, shiftless baby kicker" after your dosh for all the good it did us. We stood on raw feet for hours outside various hotels, but there were always hundreds of kids and we never got a bed. I started hallucinating. For hours at a stretch I thought I was back on Captain Hook's Foated Hulk. In lucid moments I'd gladly have given him my right arm to be there. But I knew the captain wasn't interested in right arms. Once we'd been turned away from an hostel, we'd make our way to one of the stations, King's Cross or St Pancras mostly, to wait for the Sally Army. The walk would keep us from hypothermia, and the Sally Army came round about midnight with super sandwiches. It was 3 grubs, there was always a mob, but we usually scored a butty a piece or a mug of soup, and that's what kept us alive until February came, and the thaw. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering why I wasn't attending job interviews all this time, I can enlighten you. My clothes were sodden rags. My fingernails were black claws, and matted hair down to my shoulders, and a stank. I wanted work alright, would have killed for it. But I knew I hadn't open hell of being taken on in that condition. I wouldn't have hired me. February wasn't a heatwave either, but it stayed above freezing most of the time and we kept our feet dry. Tapping got a bit easier too. Not easy, but easier. I imagined I was becoming streetwise, but I should have known better. I should have realised it was being with Ginger that was making things easier for me, but I didn't. Not until this day I'm going to tell you about. The day Ginger vanished. It began like any other day. We woke up in a doorway when it was still dark, packed our gear and went for some coffee. We were dossing near Camden station and there was this all-night cafe called the Brasilia, where we'd sit warming up till it got light and we could start tapping. Anyway, this particular morning Ginger said, "I'm meeting some mates down Holborn this morning, so I'll see you later, okay?" I shrugged. Sure. I didn't know who these mates were or when he'd fixed it up, but it was obvious he didn't want me along and I wasn't going to argue. The quickest way to lose a mate is to make yourself a drag, so I pretended I didn't give a toss. I did though. It hurt like hell. I walked him along to the station and said, "Have a nice day." He grinned and nodded, and the stream of early travellers swept him away. And I never saw him again. I spent the day trailing up and down the high street, tapping. It was cold and blustery, but dry. I kept thinking about Ginger, wondering what he was doing with his mates in Holborn, and why he hadn't wanted me along. Maybe he's a dealer, I thought. Smack and crack, ecstasy, or maybe he's got this rich bird, an heiress or something, and they're shacked up right now in a luxury penthouse pad, tearing up lobsters and swilling champagne. I wasn't seriously worried. Not then. He'd gone off before and come back, but I'd be glad when this day was over just the same. There's a clock outside the station. I looked at it every time I passed. At 5:30 I stopped walking up and down. Some of the shops were just closing, so I sat down in a doorway from which I could watch the station. I'd no idea what time he'd return, of course. It might be hours yet. But my feet were killing me, and I had to sit somewhere. I could see the clock, so I kept an eye on that too. I've never known time pass so slowly. At some point I fell asleep, and I must have slept a long time, because when the cold woke me, it was after 11 and the station had closed. And no way of knowing whether Ginger had returned or not. I looked in all the usual kips and he wasn't in any of them. I couldn't face the night alone, so I went to Captain Hook and surrendered every penny I had for a place on a boat. But this time, there was no sweet dream.